Okay, welcome everybody. This is Hernan Mayo, and we are live here. And we're actually, if you hear noises, because it's Christmas, and everybody is enjoying, celebrating life, celebrating, that we're alive, right? That we made it. We're made it. And today I wanted, first of all, we have a distinguished panel of people that have been, 20, 30 years in technology, and that are leading the way in different businesses. So what we're gonna do is first everybody's gonna introduce themselves, right? And then we're gonna ask some questions. I'm gonna pass it on to Carlos, which has also other questions. So Carlos is the head of the Global Industry Group for Technology. He brings together people to try to talk about technology around the world in our network. So Carlos, let's start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll pass it along, okay?
Hey guys, my name is Carlos Vargas. I'm a senior data scientist. I've been doing data science for more or less 4 years. I teach Python for data science at Columbia Business School, and here we are just to connect with you guys.
Thank you, Carlos. And probably in order of how long I know people, probably it's a toss-up between Guillermo and Milton, but because Milton is further away, Milton, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Milton Santiago. I been in digital transformation from banks, primarily in the banking space, for a little bit over 30 years. I have multiple hats that I wear. I think when you have the entrepreneur bug, you wear multiple hats. So I head up digital banking and innovation for Silicon Valley Bank, which is a bank that has responsibility for startups. We bank 70% of the startups worldwide. And I also then have a media company that we do YouTube influencing, as well as a 360 business as well. So have a lot of little, I would say, rods in the fire. Big technology guy for a long time.
So that's an understatement.
Yeah.
So I know Milton for a long time, and I know, when he was in charge of the digital corporate strategy for Bank of America. And we paraded around Latin America for many years, and now we are mentoring people. So it's funny how we come together to help other people. So thank you, Milton, for all you do, and his wife as well as part of our group. So thank you. Who else do we have? Ignacio, are you there?
I am here.
Go ahead.
So my name is Ignacio Rivera. I am a reformed finance guy moving into technology about, I think, 11 years now. So I've always had an interest in technology and automation. So about 10 years ago, I switched over, and I've really enjoyed it. So primarily now I'm focused on data, on the data side of technology, and I head up the data governance practice at Ryder.
Excellent. So who else is here? Mike.
Okay, Mike Babbitt. I'm in international trade at Bank of America, and I help customers that are trying to import and export. So specifically, traditional trade products and supply chain finance products are what I help promote. I met Hernan at Bank of America when I was in operations in that same group. Now I'm in sales in that group. So I've seen it from both sides of the table, if you will. But happy to be here and looking forward to learning from you.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm texting people on the other side, so bear with me while we're here. Sebastián Castañeda. What's going on, Sebastián?
Everything great. I am originally from Peru. I live now in Austria. That's why I'm talking so, I don't want to be so loud. It's very late here. I used to work in digital marketing, and then I switched to web development. So I do quality assurance for an e-commerce website here. That's how I got into tech.
Excellent. Welcome. Welcome. Okay. So who else is here? I see Daniel. Daniel, you're in? Oh, Daniel is still lingering.
He's connecting. We can go ahead with Guillermo Benitez.
Sure.
Go ahead, Guillermo.
You have here's the newest member of Apprentice, Hernan, my grandson, who decided
Excellent.
to barge into the office. But Guillermo Benitez, lifelong technology. I spent the first part of my career, 25 years in banking. That's where I met Hernan through a couple of organizations that we've been on together, FIBA and South Florida Banking Institute. Transitioned, always been in banking, the operations side, technology, headed up departments of IT and operations, transitioned out in 2012 and went into cybersecurity and technology, and have been business process automation. And the last 4 years, I've had the pleasure and honor of work leading up the financial services vertical for United Data Technologies with customers across the nation in several states, and helping them accomplish their technology needs, whether it's data center, cloud, digital transformation, cybersecurity, managed services, everything around helping them using technology to improve their business outcomes. And I've been a member of Apprentice worldwide since the beginning, a good friend of Hernan. And anything that I can do to help and collaborate, you guys can count on my support.
Thank you, Guillermo. It's been a great ride. Thank you. Ahora sí, Boricua, your turn.
Hello, everybody.
Dale.
My name is Daniel Resto. I'm from Puerto Rico. So we're from Hernanes. And yeah, I'm actually starting my own business right now, from messaging and messages and como en diligencia, no me sale. Like doing services to small entrepreneurs in the area. And so my English is not that good, but I'm working on it. So now, hello, ¿me escucha? Ahora.
Perfect, we hear you.
Okay.
Welcome.
So, yeah, thank you.
Viva Puerto Rico. Mira, Milton es boricua.
¡Huepa!
Muy bien.
Por si acaso.
Hay que sacar el coquito para celebrar esta noche.
Oh, yeah.
Sí,
Chacho, bro, el chacho.
El coquito encendido aquí. Estoy viéndolo.
So the first thing is, I'm glad that we're having a small group, and I didn't send it out to mass, because what we want to do is first have a little dialogue about us, right? And what we're trying to accomplish here. So for the past 4 months, we've been trying to do global industry meetings, and the purpose of these global industry groups are to help the associates, right, and the apprentices. So to help Carlos, to help Daniel, to help all the guys that are in our team get to the next level. And so we're doing these meets. First thing is for them to get to know you, right? So I wanted them to understand that the most important thing here is to build relationships, right? Build relationships, number one, right? So do not be afraid to talk to people. These are my friends, right? Ignacio, Guillermo, Milton, Mike are my friends. They have been friends for a long time. We're here to help, okay? So that's the most important thing. If you feel embarrassed, let it get it out of your system very quickly, because this is a safe space for us to have open discussions about the things that we need to move to the next level, or to something that's bothering you. If you need psychological help, we have psychiatrists, right? These are not the guy for that. So we have coaches and psychiatrists. Importantly is for us to get to know each other, right? Second semester, so they're doing 2 events. One, to get to know the team in technology, and the second is basically to promote to the market. So next semester, quote unquote, we're gonna do a big technology symposium conference, right? That is for young professionals, and these are gonna be some of the speakers, and we'll add more speakers depending on the need and the topic. But that is gonna be a little bit. This is basically the core team. It's organized. Carlos. We'll talk about that later on, but these are,
a little
by the
robotic.
way, these are people that have been doing this for a long time and are leaders in the industry and are working right now. These are not retired professionals. These are people that are in the nitty gritty of. It's because I had a drink, that happens. That happens. Do you hear me or no? All right, hold on.
Yeah, now we hear you, but
Yes
it was
or no?
sounding, it was breaking up there for a little bit. It sounded laggy.
Okay, well, you got the gist of a little bit of what I was discussing. So this meeting is basically for us to get to know each other. What I wanted to hear from everybody here, and particularly, Carlos, I know you had some questions, but is how do you see the outlook? We had a rough year, right? So maybe guys, tell me about this year, how you've been coping in your businesses, and what's your outlook for 2021? How are you preparing as executives to manage this new, the new year? How are you looking at it, and what do you think that is needed for that is needed to be successful in 2021? I want to hear from you guys, particularly in the technology and innovation space. So I'll throw it out there. I guess because we started with Milton, we'll start with Ignacio since he was the last one. Ignacio,
Sure.
what can you share about?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's been kind of an interesting year in terms of the market. We've shifted a lot as a company to look at certain areas of certain industries in particular that really have flourished during the COVID times. One area that I know a lot of businesses are struggling with is really going to that e-commerce space. It's something that's impacted every business, really. I mean, everything from restaurants to gyms to teachers to universities. So really moving into that digital space has been an uncomfortable spot for a lot of people. That's probably the biggest change I've seen. And really, and understanding what's shifted in their business is also a huge component to what's happening in the market. There is again, every industry's had some impact, but certain industries have been more impacted than others. To really understanding your customer base I think is a big part of what companies are struggling with right now. If you don't have data that's well organized in a way that you can consume that data and make decisions on where you're going to shift your resources into 2021, and really become digital. I think I don't care what business you're in right now. I think one of the things that's really changed in the industry is every company, every small business has had to accommodate to taking online orders, had to accommodate to taking online payments, had to shift their service models. It's a big shift for smaller companies, but those have done it. Those that have done it well have really flourished through this business. And I'll give a really simple example of a good friend of mine. He's a marketer through and throughout. I mean, he started his career at Bacardi, worked at a large ad agency here in Miami that was linked to one of the top 5 agencies in New York. And it's funny, he started a pizza company of all things. And he found that within the restaurant industry, so he used a lot of his marketing skills He's got 3 locations. One of them is in Marlins Stadium here in Miami. So he really went, full tilt on his marketing, and he realized that he actually did really, really well during COVID because people were really doing a lot of takeout. But in order to enable that process, he really had to have the ability to do online ordering, curbside pickup, a lot of the things that people have struggled with, and some companies did better than others. But those that kind of weathered the storm are coming out of this COVID crisis pretty strong. So it's a lesson for all of us. Never become complacent in this market. Digital is a good way to go, and really never take these situations as a negative. Sometimes they are a positive. Even I have another friend of mine. She has a yoga studio in Orlando, and she has a great yoga studio. I mean, she did very, very well. Moved down from Ohio just to be closer to her family in Orlando, and she's done fantastic during COVID. And it was really because she already had a digital footprint, and she had a way to do virtual classes, and really shifted her business over from a physical yoga studio with anywhere from 10 to 15 students at a time to 30 or 40 students at a time, because she had a digital footprint and she had a way to accommodate for that, and really she adjusted. So it's a good lesson for all of us. It's the market is changing, but if you're smart and accommodate and you're agile, you really could really benefit from this. So that's really been the story that I've seen kind of play out. And we as a company, Ryder, has really done that as well. I mean, we've moved heavily into the e-commerce business, shifted a lot of our resources over to the healthcare space that we were already invested in. So it's been good.
Excellent. Thank you, Ignacio. I know you work on 20,000 projects at the same time, and we'll talk about Agile and the way that you handle it later on. But I want to hear a little bit about what's going on with you guys and how do you see it. I know Guillermo is a busy guy. I see him. He's busy talking to a lot of people. Guillermo, how do you find 2020 for you, and what do you?
Well, 2020, I mean, look, it was a shift, helping everybody with that digital transformation, working from home, setting up a secure environment, and to be able to transact what had been the traditional space in an office space. How is that collaboration? I think that after several months of COVID, I think we've already gotten the hang of that. I think that 2021 is headed to, we're going to start the year very much the way we're ending it. We really don't have a finite timeline of this back to normal. But I think that Iggy mentioned it, right? It's how do you use the data? How do you transition? How do you market? There's a lot of the digital space, what had been the traditional way of doing things has changed, has flipped. A lot of it has become with, just electronic forms and being able to process transactions quicker. The digital payments in the financial space, that's pushing away, continuing to push to the digital transactions that we had seen. If you remember back, we would say 10 years ago that we weren't going to see checks. Well, you're not seeing a lot of checks exchanging today. That's continuing to just, erode away.
Awesome. Thank you, Guillermo. EBP man, I know you. So I'm a fan, and I follow you, and I see all these reviews. But I know you're busy in your business, in this new operation. Why don't you give us a little bit about your world and what you're dealing with on a?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you kind of the perspective of my personal businesses, and then also my corporate businesses, because there's different type of hustles that are going on. And I think what I've heard already from several that have just spoken so far, hearing what Iggy said, what Guillermo said, I think it translates it down to one thing, and that is adapt. If you adapt to the circumstances of this economy, if you adapt to the circumstances of how we engage with people, if you adapt to the way that you now have to transact with your customers, you will be successful. And I have seen, not just in my business, but also corporate businesses, how businesses who are able to adapt, embrace change, and transform how they do their business, they are incredibly successful in this economy. I've spent, over the last year, I've been spending a lot of my time doing educational series for example, my wife is in the real estate business. And if you think about real estate, where you show homes, you couldn't show homes anymore, right? With all the COVID stuff going on. So how do you sell in a market where you just can't show property? So spend some time really educating real estate agencies about how do they use technology to engage, how do they use technology to sell, how do they use technology to close deals. And we're looking at in the Chicago market, even throughout this entire COVID space, homes don't last more than 24 hours before they're sold. And it is really the leverage of technology, both for promotion, for engagement, and for sale, that it was really key for the segment. And so we've seen our business grow on the real estate side, and then on the marketing and communication side, it's also been a fantastic opportunity because, again, in the business that I have, my personal business with YouTube, it's all about digital. So our transition has been very easy. Now, as we go into the corporate space has had to transform as well. There's a lot of things that we've had to look at. Moving and adjusting from a technology perspective when it comes to adaptation, to being able to adapt, is easy. The hard part is the human factor, mental health, keeping engaged, making sure that we have empathy. It's been really that side that's been challenging. So I have seen in our business, even though in the corporate life, we've been very successful as a bank, we've seen a 24%, I would say, ROI. We've seen a 38% growth, which is astronomical for the banking sector. The challenge that I see is more making sure that we're mindful of our employees, and we're agile, but you could get lost in agile, and a 7, 8, 9-hour day can easily become a 14 or 16-hour day. So what I've seen is that the work is there, but the mental health and caring and taking care of each other is what has been the biggest challenge during the COVID period and technology. So
absolutely.
Yep.
I think it's kind of interesting. Something you mentioned there is the real estate market has done. If I could add to something you brought up there, I think the real estate market is a great example of a shift. There's been a shift in where people live, and because the financial, the rate of mortgages have gone down. Who would have thought that so many people would buy houses without actually visiting them?
Yeah.
And I mean, it is such a big difference in that space and that industry. And those that have accommodated have done so well.
Yeah, huge technology opportunities in the space. And really what it comes down to, guys, and Iggy, to your point, like, I'm not a realtor, but it takes you being able to get out of your comfort zone, making yourself accessible, and listening. Right? If you have good listening skills, you will find opportunities. If you have good listening skills, you'll adapt. You'll be able to help others. And for us, it's sad because many have struggled. Many still are struggling. But if you can adapt and you can apply, you will be successful.
Excellent. By the way, you guys should be here, Mike and Milton, because over here, Carlos is the head of financial institutions for Bank of America and Latin America. Moises runs corporate banking for Latin America. Tom runs private banking for Latin America. And Richie runs compliance. So these are the big shots of the bank. I used to work at a bank for 9 years, and they have petite committee of people, and we're all talking about 2021 in a big great outlook for the business. So Mike, what do you think?
I need to get myself off mute. I echo the thoughts that have already been expressed. I think that the one thing that we've seen, especially in the supply chain front, is just shifting supply chains. A lot of things are moving closer to home, and a lot of things are shifting from China to other parts of Southeast Asia. anybody that kind of follows the supply chain industry could probably tell you that. But as we're here to kind of talk about technology and the technological aspects of supply chain, I think that's the technology aspect of international trade is really, really exciting right now, specifically because not just how payments are treated from an accounting perspective, but with the advent of blockchain and some of the other tools that are on the horizon, it's going to be an exciting 3 years in international trade as some of those technologies develop and as we're able to kind of see further adoption of those. And I think the real bottleneck is just making sure that the adoption is there, not only from a buyer and seller perspective, but from the banks and the regulators and the other types of entities that are out there deciding what the rules are and how to make this new technology work. No doubt it's going to be a game changer. It's just we'll just kind of have to see how soon that happens. But I'm giving it about 3 years before it really finds its feet. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Excellent. Well, when we shared topics, we wanted to talk about, Carlos did a survey, and most of the people wanted to talk about Agile, and the tools for project management. Carlos, what specific questions do you have for our team?
Yeah, so basically this is a question I've been having for a couple months since I'm pretty junior on almost everything. So normally on technology we use Agile methodologies, right? It's weird for us to use waterfall, but waterfall has its pros and Agile has also its pros. One of the contrasts or cons I see against Agile is that I cannot see a clear picture of first analyzing any problem. I'm a data scientist, so
You're on mute.
hey guys, could you hear me? Anything?
We lost you at data scientist. Data scientist was the last thing you said.
Yeah, so as a data scientist is normal for let's say right now I'm working on understanding what's the sweet spot for agents to be on a call center, right? So calls go into the call center, and I'm trying to create a model called the Erlang A, and just do some feature selection to identify the correct agents that must be taking calls, forecasting the calls per hour, and understanding how many agents I need to have per hour, right? So business usually comes to me and asks for models like this, but analyzing first the model to say, okay, I can go ahead and do it, but it's gonna return this amount of money and it's going to take me this amount of time. It's pretty difficult for me to do on Agile. And also on Waterfall, it's a broader methodology that I can just say stupid things analyzing with the Waterfall. So what are usually your approaches in these kind of projects? Like almost, I think every technology project can be measured the same quote unquote way, right?
Yeah, if I can go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I think the biggest challenge I've seen with waterfall in general is really the staffing model. With waterfall, it's actually a lot easier. It's a little bit longer term. People don't have to be 100% on the project. With Agile, it's a little bit more challenging because you really have to reorganize your technology and your business teams around that product ownership. That to me is probably the hardest part of Agile. Where we, if we don't have a successful project, it's usually because there's not engagement from the technical team or not engagement from that product owner. The successful projects that we have are really where we have a mature group that's running an Agile team, and they become very effective at rolling out improvements to their product. It doesn't work as well if you don't organize around the product. If you organize around a project alone, it's very difficult to organize that product team, or sorry, the Agile team, because it just doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. So let's say I've got a specific need, and I'm going to use your call center example, right? So let's say I want to organize an Agile project around a call center. Well, once that project is done, you're not necessarily, you have a call center for the whole company, but it's not necessarily project specific. But if I have a project specific need within my product line because I don't have very good service for a certain product, then that improvement to my call center just becomes another part of my sprint. It's another feature in that process, and it's very logical. And the people have, the product owners are much more engaged. To me, that's probably the hardest part of Agile, is really building that team around the product. Where I've seen most companies struggle is really on that model to really get the business to really staff these projects differently and really account for them differently. So to me, that's been the biggest challenge from a business perspective, moving from waterfall to Agile.
Yeah.
But
I'll go ahead and go ahead, Carlos.
yeah, but the question is, how do you take the first steps on analyzing the project? Like on Agile or waterfall, how do you understand what's going to be your return of investment, the time you're going to take on the project between others? I seen it's called the iteration zero.
So let me jump in and share something with you. So like waterfall, Agile, there's lean Agile, there's various versions of Agile that people implement. And I'm just going to give you the version that we've implemented. I have 40 Agile pods. At Bank of America, when I had created CashPro for the bank, I had a budget of $256 million a year for development. And every year I had to go in and ask for money. And I would have times where I would have the full money, and sometimes at the end of the year, there was a clawback and I would lose money. I think anybody who's in the space knows that you lose money as you get towards the end of the year. So you try to spend everything up front. And there was also a gated funded model. With Agile, there's a couple things you have to do. Is first of all, you may need to make sure that you have a solid project charter, right? So you have to have your project charter. What is it that pod is going to be responsible for, and what is the deliverables for that pod? Second, what we've done is, and this is something that I've learned, I've done this too often where I didn't want to get trapped on the funding, because if you have a pod of people, mixed discipline, and then you run out of money, then you have to send those people back into their day jobs, and then getting them back is too difficult. So we've implemented a funding model where the pod gets funded for the year or for the duration of the charter. So if that charter, for example, in your call center, you say that that's a 1-year charter, those people are funded for a full calendar year in the charter. And then the goals of that charter at a high level, because Agile is not by definition, it's not about getting down to the fine detail. It's aspirational, it's directional. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to Agile, right? Because waterfall, you start with the requirements first, then you know how much things are going to cost, how long it's going to take. With Agile, you start with an idea, you start with the direction, and then as you're developing and as you're sprinting and as you go from your sprint 0 to your development sprint to every single sprint, you start creating, your picture. And a matter of fact, even if you're doing it really well, the delivery date is less important. It's more about the journey that you're going through Agile. So I would say charter, important. The charter is going to allow you to define what's the goal. It's going to define your skill sets. And then it's going to define also what that cost of that pod. So to give you a sense for my pods, the average cost for a pod annually is $1 million. Right, so we allocate $1 million for that pod. They work for a full year, and I know exactly what this pod is working on. And that's how we make sure we have good clarity. And the other thing is, regardless of the business, so for example, call center, I have call center transformation going on. I don't have a call center manager responsible for the deliverables. I have a product manager. And when I say product manager is used too often loosely in the industry. Not everyone is a product manager. Today, many product managers that I meet, 95% of the product managers I meet are project managers. They're not product managers. So that product manager needs to make sure that you've had people who have trained to be product managers, that they understand what product management is, so that they can manage it as such and not as an operational manager, because you'll have different outcomes. So it really comes down to that beginning, that structure, and the funding. At least that's been in my experience.
Hey, tell me about the skills. So, as a participant in Agile projects and in Waterfall, I remember talking to you about some parts of the implementation, particularly when Latin America, right? What are the skills that you're looking at? So, do the people that work on projects that to be explain to me this thing about, you know, being a black belt, right? Six Sigma and Agile and project manager. What are the skills needed in this to be effective to run these major projects in your institutions? I don't know, Ignacio or Milton. What are the skill set that we have? What you look for when getting these people to?
I mean, one simple skill is really having good communicators and cohesion within that product team. I think that's probably the most important component, and really having a multidisciplinary team. And one of the hard things about and we're actually not that far off what Milton mentioned in terms of our pods. So one of the important things about that pod is really having team members that could do more than one thing, and that's probably the hardest part about Agile, is that, you know, if you're developing on a certain product, you may have somebody who's a web developer, but they also have a good understanding of APIs, and really they have a little bit of a multidiscipline approach. So really the cohesion of the team stays in place, and somebody can pick up that extra backlog item because they do have that skill set. But building that cohesion and that knowledge of what you're working on for a long period of time, to me, is such an important component of that team. But you do have to have, I mean, there are some specific roles within the Agile methodology that you do have to have. I mean, you do have to have your Scrum Masters, and they have a very specific skill set. You know, you have your product owner, which is an extremely important component. I think Milton also refers to them as a product manager as opposed to a product owner. So you have some really important skills in that process. And as a product owner, at least on our side, you really have to have a little bit of vision. It's what you can get done, but what's important in developing that minimum viable product from one sprint to the other. Having a good product owner will really get you much further. And they have to have a little bit of a technical background as well, at least on our side. That's been helpful, and an appreciation for the skills that others bring to that party. But it's that group cohesion that's so important.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that we do have product owners, but we also then have product managers. You know, because of the size of the work that we're doing, we have in the pods, we have product managers and product owners working side by side, and then we have a product manager that oversees multiple pods that are going on. But each pod dynamic is going to be unique. So when it comes from a skill set perspective, it really depends on that project charter, what type of persons you need. You could use a full stack developer depending on the work that you need. You're going to need a QA person, you know, so for quality perspective and testing. You do need also, you could have BAs, you can have SAs. It really depends on what that charter of that pod is. So for example, I have marketing pods. In a marketing pod, I do not need, you know, I don't need QA, I need copywriters, right? I need content editors. I don't need a QA person like you would have in technology. I also don't have essays. I have different skill sets. So it's going to be really unique depending on what you're trying to accomplish with each one. But it requires a different mindset, because that pod fails and succeeds together. That pod loses its alliances with the normal organizational structure as it exists, you know, as it exists in the normal workforce. So it really calls about changing things. And depending on your role, if you are going to be a Scrum Master, if you're going to be, you know, a product owner, product manager, or, you know, someone in technology, your skill sets are going to be relevant to the work that that pod has to accomplish.
Excellent.
Coming back to the skills, I noticed that you guys aren't looking for expertise on the technical side. Is that a wise decision? Because I encounter project managers who do not have any idea of what's going on in the code, and that just difficults the job, because you need to first explain to the project manager what is going on and what are you going to do. And part of the project manager job is to do the assignment of time and to understand, to manage the time of the team, right? So if the project manager does not have an expertise on the technical side, it can difficult this process of time scheduling the projects.
Yeah, I think it depends on the company. And Iggy, you mentioned that too, about having the technical background. All of my product folks, all of them have a technical background. All of my product folks can code. All my product managers understand. And those who don't understand, they need to get into the details. You know, so go ahead, Iggy.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, I think it's an important component. Depending, I mean, but I think you brought up a couple of important things there, Milton. We actually do have a lot of pods or agile teams within marketing, and they're very different than our technology teams. I mean, we have a technology transformation team that's primary. We have 800 shops across the United States. That team is completely different than our marketing team.
Yeah.
So, and they have very different skill sets, but it's very hard to be a product owner and even a product manager if you don't have at least an appreciation for technology, and what can happen. But really so you mentioned a couple things there that are important, is setting up the time for that specific task. That's actually specific to the user story. Mm-hmm. So the project manager themselves or the product owner is not really establishing the cadence of what they can work on. That's the individual, right? The user story dictates that. So as the team gets better, they get much better at estimating those hours. But that's not necessarily, I mean, the Scrum Master, which is the traditional product manager in an agile environment, they just make sure that there's no blockers, that things are working as expected, but they're not establishing the time that it takes to do things. Yeah. I mean, that's a collective. Yeah. And I think a really important piece that Milton mentioned as well is that team works autonomously. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the hard things for me is I'm for lack of a better definition, a resource manager. So I have a development team and I'm responsible for primarily master data domains like customer, location, vehicle, supplier. So it's hard for me to staff these projects and say, I've got a resource on my team that's going to be in this agile project and not be heavily involved, because at the end of the day, if somebody on my team does bad on a project, it makes me look bad. But that's completely against the whole agile methodology. They function as a team. They establish what they're going to work on, what's the minimum viable product in those first couple sprints, and they set their own tone, and they get done what they can within that amount of time. It all happens within that team, and it's such a different way of thinking. And it's a little unnerving sometimes as a resource manager, because you know the project is happening, you know there's development. For me, on my master data domain, and it's a little unnerving because they set the tone, they set what they work on, they estimate the hours. And if they have $1 million to work with, they're going to run that $1 million based on their agile backlog. And if they don't accomplish everything that you expect them to accomplish, they're constantly reprioritizing what's important. And that could be a little bit unnerving as a resource manager. I don't know if you feel the same way, Milton.
Yeah, no, I do. And, one of the things that we've implemented that really works well is, how many of you have heard of the 2 pizza rule? Have you guys heard of that? The 2 pizza rule?
No, not me.
Yeah. So look it up because it's interesting.
Us too. Yep.
Yeah. Amazon, right? Very popular guy, Jeff Bezos. Basically, he talked about how a team becomes ineffective when it's larger than what 2 pizzas can fill, right? That can feed. So what ends up happening is, when you have too many people involved in your pods, right? The size of the pod and the effectiveness of the pod, things don't happen. You have too many people involved. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we keep the pod, because it's very easy for a pod or a scrum team to get very large very fast. So what we do is we try to live by that principle and keep the team small. And then also, make sure that those teams are empowered to make decisions and also understand. So for example, Carlos, in your point about understanding technology, we recognize, so last year in June, the bank that I'm with right now asked, could we do an agile transformation? I started hiring people. We hired around 100 people because we were going to be having multiple pods starting up, and we needed UI, UX, we needed all these type of disciplines. And what we recognized is that we could not find product owners that were technical, that were the unicorns, right? There's very few unicorns in the industry. So what we also then recognized that we had to create an educational program. So in addition to our agile transformation and doing agile, we actually have a university that teaches product management, product owners, scrum masters, their roles, and then brings them up to speed when it comes to having somewhat of a technical aptitude, so that they understand how to work with their IT partners. And then also, like, I don't need everybody to know how to code, right? But I do need people to understand their entire platform and have process maps, understand how the systems talk to each other. I don't need someone who doesn't know what a WSDL is to understand what a WSDL is. I don't need someone to understand, any kind of operating language or programming language. But I do need people to be able to understand, the complexity associated with the things that they have to do. So we live by that, and that's helped us be successful. And then with that educational program, we train people who don't have the skills that they need, but need to be meaningful contributors in the pods.
Guys, we're going to, if it's okay by you, I want to give like 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes in Spanish, just to help a little bit the discussion with some of the guys here. So, okay, guys, we're going to stop in English. Just in case.
And then I thought I was speaking Spanish when I said pizza. How do you say pizza in Puerto Rican? Pizza.
Pastel con carne encima.
Yeah. O se dice empanado de pizza. Una empanada.
Oye, tenemos a Sebastián que está ¿dónde tú estás, Sebastián? ¿En Austria o en Ámsterdam?
En Austria, en Viena.
Cuéntame un poco de lo que estás haciendo tú.
Yo trabajo como Quality Assurance, trabajamos también en un equipo Scrum. No respetamos la regla de las 2 pizzas porque es un equipo un poco más grande. Somos, creo que 10 personas. Pero lo importante es que trabajamos juntos, todos en los nuevos features que desarrollamos. Y eso es lo interesante, ¿no? Está siempre la persona de UX. Yo como QA tenemos a los desarrolladores frontend y backend, un product owner y nuestro Scrum Master. Y trabajamos en sprints de 2 semanas. Y bueno, nada, desarrollamos los nuevos features siempre acorde a lo que los stakeholders piden para la web, y estamos intentando enfocarnos más en testear, en hacer A/B tests, en vez de simplemente lanzar nuevas cosas, testear siempre algo antes de seguir desarrollándolo, ¿no? Para ver si es que realmente vale la pena.
Súper. Súper. Oye, Iggy, cuéntame un poco de cuál es la competencia de India, porque yo sé que tú estás envuelto con equipos globales. ¿Tú crees que India sigue siendo líder implementando estas cosas o has visto un shift un cambio en la base de conocimiento y está más dividido a nivel mundial. ¿Qué tú opinas de la gente en India? ¿Y somos competitivos acá en Estados Unidos, en América Latina?
Depende de la disciplina. Esa es la parte clave. En la parte de Agile es un poco diferente porque depende mucho en la parte de comunicación. Y dependiendo si esa persona puede hablar mejor o explica bien las cosas, entonces sí, llegan a esa parte. Pero lo que ha visto más que nada es la parte técnica. Bien técnica es la parte que sigue siendo importante por parte de India y va a seguir por esa parte porque más que nada tienen muchas personas estudiando la parte técnica que no tenemos en los Estados Unidos. Y eso viene siendo un problema para los Estados Unidos, que no tenemos esos, y esa es la parte clave de los H1 visas. Si no tenemos ese talento en los Estados Unidos, tenemos que traer personas de afuera para hacer esos trabajos. Y no creo que va a cambiar eso en la disciplina de tecnología, pero en la parte de Agile ha cambiado un poco porque la parte de algunas disciplinas adentro de lo que viene siendo Agile, como los Scrum Masters y los Product Owners, muchas veces no he visto que vienen tanto de India más más de los Estados Unidos.
Pero oye, una de las cosas que yo diría es que India es un reto y también una oportunidad. Y te voy a decir por qué. Primeramente, creo que para algunos la dificultad con el H1 visa puede ser una bendición. Y te digo por qué. Yo tengo los hijos míos son 20 y pico, 25 años. Son ya, bueno, ellos piensan que son adultos, yo digo que no lo son todavía. ¿Okay? Y muchos de sus amigos que se han graduado, se le hizo difícil conseguir trabajo, especialmente en el campo de tecnología. No porque no había talento, sino porque el costo del talento en India está bien bajo. Y lo que ese mercado ha hecho en los Estados Unidos ha acabado con lo que es el campo de tecnología. La entrada es difícil para los jóvenes que están entrando en el mercado entrar y sufragar esa necesidad. Ahora, con este cambio, lo que he visto, estos jóvenes que se han graduado con el hijo mío, todos tienen trabajo. Todos tienen trabajo. Y la necesidad es muy grande ahora en los Estados Unidos para este campo. Y yo tengo también un equipo en India, pero el reto es el poder mantener ese conocimiento, porque las personas en India, por poco dinero se cambian de una compañía a otra. Es difícil uno mantener lo que es el knowledge base en India. So, estratégicamente, el utilizar la India es algo que normalmente el knowledge base se mantiene en los Estados Unidos o en Latinoamérica, donde sea el centro de ese negocio, y se usa India como plataforma de desarrollo en el cual se permite desarrollar donde el sol nunca se ponga. Pero con todo eso, es para nosotros un reto, hasta el punto de que para nosotros poder retener a los empleados indios, nosotros tenemos servicio de carro negro para todos los empleados. Escuchen eso. Lo que hacemos es que cada día se recoge al empleado en India en su casa con carro privado, se le lleva al trabajo, se le suple de comer y se le lleva a su casa en carro privado. No importa el nivel, no estamos hablando de ejecutivo, estamos hablando de programadores, Scrum Masters, QA, todo el mundo tiene carro privado. Porque la transportación en India es tan difícil que ese perk mantiene a los empleados. Pero un reto grande poder mantener el talento.
Hace un par de horas justamente estaba leyendo la historia de IBM y HP en México. IBM y HP, por lo que estaba leyendo, tenían el talento tecnológico en México, porque obviamente somos más baratos que Estados Unidos. Y en 2018 deciden salirse esas dos para irse a India. Grave error, por lo que estaba leyendo, 95% de sus encuestas de HP y de IBM es que los indios saben programar, pero no son excelentes.
No,
Entonces,
yeah.
2015 regresan a México con la cola entre las patas diciendo, la regamos, necesitamos los tecnológicos mexicanos, porque somos más baratos que Estados Unidos y por lo que estaba leyendo, somos la punta tecnológica de la TAM. Entonces es en donde hay más habilidades y somos más baratos comparativamente contra los indios. ¿Qué piensan de eso?
Yo concuerdo con eso, y lo que tú estás describiendo es lo que se conoce como right shoring.
Yep.
Right shore as opposed to offshore. Offshore es India, right shore es un lugar. Y no es solamente, por ejemplo, mucho del desarrollo en los Estados Unidos se está moviendo, y yo no sé si Iggy, tú has visto esto, pero yo he visto mucho desarrollo moviéndose a Jacksonville, Florida. Porque por Jacksonville, por allá arriba, el costo de vida es mucho más barato que en New York, que en otras partes de North America. Y se está moviendo mucho del aspecto tecnológico en ese lugar. Y la otra cosa que hay que reconocer es que la cultura india es muy literal. No hay área gris, no hay creatividad. Es bien difícil, especialmente cuando uno está desarrollando los stories, cualquiera de los planos. Ellos van a hacer esa cosa y solo eso y nada más. Y eso es lo que sucede. Y a veces en Agile no hay perfección. Hay progreso, pero no hay perfección. Y se necesita un desarrollador, sea de full stack o lo que sea, que tenga common sense y que pueda, ¿cómo se dice? No sé cómo se dice en español. They have to think for themselves. I don't find many people. No por ser ofensivo, pero no lo veo.
No tienen iniciativa.
Yeah. Lo tienen, pero la cultura es una cultura que enfoca en completar. Por ejemplo, si ellos se les da un módulo que va a ser 3 story points, 10 story points, ellos están enfocados en completarlo, no la calidad, sino the completion. Okay. Y yo he tenido mucho programas que han fallado por la calidad del code. Fatal. No han podido. So, hemos tenido un equipo mixto en los Estados Unidos. Y también tenemos un equipo muy grande, India, que son indios locales, pero como que son americanizados.
Ok.
Oye, qué esperanza le da a mi gente aquí, a los jóvenes. ¿Qué son los temas que tú crees al grupo de nosotros que está aquí para que hagan la diferencia en sus carreras en los próximos años? ¿Qué les recomienda?
Yo creo que la parte importante es seguir aprendiendo la parte de la tecnología y cambiando y siendo agile en lo que aprenden. Hoy lo que es importante hoy puede ser que no es importante en un año. Mira lo que ha pasado en el año entre el 2019 comparado con 2020. Completamente diferente la parte digital. ¿Qué partes de la economía y los talentos que hacen falta para esa economía? Para mí, esa es la parte más clave. Cuando uno acaba su carrera, no acaba su carrera, sigue conociendo. Cuando yo acabé mi carrera en University of Florida en 96, había empezado el Internet. Imagínate si yo en ese momento no seguía la parte digital y no seguía aprendiendo esa parte. Nunca cambiara lo que era, nada más que supiera la parte de finanzas. Es diferente. Seguir aprendiendo es bien importante.
Eco eso porque lo que es la tecnología, si uno es un estudiante por toda su vida, estudiante, y si desea ser un líder en tecnología, el mejor líder, él es el mejor estudiante. Vas a tener que estudiar toda tu carrera. Lo que yo añadiría a los comentarios de allí es hay un área de la tecnología que la necesidad es grande y es la combinación de UI y UX, ¿verdad? UI, que es el campo de lo que la persona toca, sea con la voz o con un ratón o con la mano, pero UX, el User Experience, es algo que cuando yo como jefe y yo estoy tratando con alguien que es tecnológico, que el enfoque de ello no es la tecnología, sino la experiencia del cliente, esa persona para mí vale más, porque yo espero en la tecnología que eso es algo básico, que eso es algo como cuando uno va a comer pizza, está el pan. ¿Verdad? El pan ya está, lo que vamos a poner, cuál es la salsa y cuál nos va a dar el sabor adicional. So, cuando yo miro a los compañeros míos de tecnología, me atrae más y son más útiles para mí una persona que tiene esa destreza tecnológica, que entiende lo que es el code, que entiende code moderno, pero cuando ellos saben hacer las preguntas correctas y interpretar la experiencia del usuario, ese es una persona de otro nivel. Y no hay suficientes personas que conocen. Tal como se mencionó aquí, que no hay suficientes product managers que saben tecnología, no hay suficiente gente de tecnología que reconocen la necesidad del cliente.
Déjenme, enfoco un poco más la pregunta de Hernán. Ahorita mi generación tiene la ventaja de poder escoger dos caminos diferentes para el crecimiento profesional. Tenemos, número uno, el camino tradicional de manager, en el que tienes que desarrollar soft skills aparte de las hard skills. Y ahora tenemos el camino de high skilled worker, en donde puedes ganar lo mismo que un director, siendo un developer fregón, o siendo un científico de datos fregón, que hace cosas, que tiene un seniority tan grande que uno vale 10 personas. ¿Qué camino? Si ustedes volvieran a tener mi edad de 25 años y tuvieran esta decisión de qué harían, si desarrollar soft skills con las hard skills que ya tienen, irse por un camino manager, o se irían por un camino de high skilled worker.
Depende de la personalidad que tienes.
Sí.
Tiene que ver con las ganas y los intereses que tiene.
Sí.
Entonces, tiene que ver dentro de tú mismo para ver lo que deseas.
Y también añadirían que eso depende, primero depende de tu interés personal. Por ejemplo, yo fui programador y mi personalidad es de extrovert. Ser programador y ser extrovert no van. Yo soy una persona muy social. Hernán me conoce. Nosotros, a mí me gusta platicar, a mí me gusta enseñar, me gusta compartir, me gusta motivar, lo cual traduce a gerencia. No que yo quiera ser gerente. Y fue algo que yo le mencioné a uno de mis empleados que quería ser líder. Yo le mencioné lo siguiente: un líder, un gerente, no es alguien que maneja, es alguien que la gente sigue. ¿Okay? Entonces, si tú tienes ese don, que las personas te siguen, que buscan dirección, y es una habilidad innata en ti. Y te digo, yo he visto muchas personas reemplazadas que son high skilled technologists. Because puede ser high skilled y puede costar mucho, y es el juego de donde uno puede tener a alguien que no es tan high skilled y para que sea un poquito más barato. Right? Eso siempre sucede. Entonces, todo depende de esa habilidad y ese deseo innato que tengas para determinar el enfoque. Pero puede ser exitoso en ambos. Puede ser, yo tengo data scientists que me agrada trabajar con ellos porque ellos enfocan en la experiencia del cliente. Y tengo data scientists que no quieren hablar con nadie, solo quieren interactuar con los datos y solamente. Y cuando yo miro lo que esas dos personas contribuyen, la persona que es inteligentísima en el data science pero que no tiene el aspecto del cliente, no es tan high skilled para mí, porque no está anticipando mi siguiente pregunta, no está desarrollando su propia hipótesis. ¿Entiendes? So, sigo regresando a esa experiencia del cliente.
Mira, pero ese es buen comentario, porque Mike, por ejemplo, Mike tiene su equipo de tecnología de implementación que está haciendo cualquier proyecto de comercio exterior, por ejemplo, ¿no? Pero él es el que habla con el cliente, se sienta con el cliente, tiene que entender al cliente y después ir para atrás a la gente en el banco y decirle, coño, ¿quién me ayuda con este tema? ¿No? Mike, ¿cómo es tu interacción con la gente de tecnología para la implementación de los programas tuyos? Estás en mute.
Disculpe.
Por eso es que no está en tecnología, no le sabe dar al botón.
Claro, la tecnología de apretar el botón pues se me escapó. Pero de todas formas es algo que es exactamente lo que yo estuve diciendo en cuanto a interactuar con los de tecnología, pues usualmente nosotros les decimos qué queremos, que nuestros clientes nos están diciendo qué quieren ellos y lo pasamos a tecnología. Y es cierto que hay gente de tecnología que tienen un nivel de skill muy alto, pero si no saben interactuar con los clientes, no les voy a poner en el teléfono con los clientes para explicar lo que quieren y no les simplemente les voy a pasar lo que ellos dicen que quieren, los clientes, pero sinceramente sería mejor y sería más poderoso si los de tecnología pueden interactuar con los clientes mismos, pero es importante que tienen los dos soft skills y hard skills para poder interactuar no solamente con los de tecnología, pero con los del extranjero, digamos, los que no son de tecnología.
Yeah.
Interesante. Bueno, señores, nos pasamos de la cuenta, era 1 hora, pero antes que todo, quería darle las gracias a ustedes por tomar el tiempo y participar aquí para apoyar a Carlos y apoyar a Daniel y apoyar a Sebastián. Yo sé que ustedes están muy ocupados, pero siempre toman su tiempito y esto les cambia la vida a mucha gente. Así que de nuevo, me quito el sombrero. No tengo sombrero, pero me lo quito anyway, virtualmente. Y les doy las gracias por el tiempo, como siempre. Carlos, any last words?
Estoy de acuerdo contigo. Muchísimas gracias. Sí hace mucho sentido tener estas pláticas porque sí puedo sentir un nivel muy elevado de las respuestas, ¿no? No es algo que pueda leer en cualquier revista, sí siento mucho expertise de su lado. Entonces agradezco mucho que tomen el tiempo para estar en estos eventos.
By the way, ellos no están lejos, están en el WhatsApp y están en el grupito del LinkedIn, así que cualquier cosa aprovechen, ¿ok? Y yo sé que, aunque están muy ocupados, ellos leen de vez en cuando los grupitos y leen el LinkedIn, o si no, me llama, Carlos, muchachos, me llaman y yo los consigo cuando estén en algún break. Así que, de nuevo, gracias por la disponibilidad.
Hernan,
Oye, dale.
No, Hernan, I did want to say, I wanted to say it in English because I probably can't describe it that well in Spanish, so I apologize if everybody's okay with that. My last piece of advice to everybody who's new in the technology field is something I mentioned before. One of the best pieces of advice that I got from a chief technology officer that I worked with a lot was to continue to be curious. Being curious in technology and building an expertise in a specific area of technology, regardless of what your role is, will continue to make you a valuable asset to any company you work at. So, for example, with my personal career, I've always been very interested in the sales automation side. So that's always been, and Guillermo knows this about me because we worked in a similar area with Salesforce and implementing automations on that side. I've always been very interested, and I read a lot about that area. When I am involved in a meeting, sometimes they involve me in meetings that I don't need to be there because I have an expertise in that area. I think that's really important. So you have a passion for a certain area of the business, like sales and marketing, but you continue to be curious about the technology that's involved in that market. If you're not curious, you're never going to be successful in technology because the technology changes. You can't. Those that I've seen that have not been successful in technology are those that move into technology because of the money and then build an expertise in a certain application. That's not the way to go with technology. With technology, you want to become an expert and you want to remain curious because the technology changes, but your expertise and your ability to learn is what really makes you different. And if you have an expertise in a specific area, like Hernan with trade finance, that's super important, right? And if to that you add technology, I mean, the sky's the limit. So I think those two components, the subject matter expertise and the curiosity and technology is very important. and then everything else will follow. Because when you have a passion for it and you have curiosity, you're going to sell that story better than anybody else can. So.
Well, you know, the good thing about not knowing is that you know who knows, right? Sometimes that is also important, right?
Yeah.
I might not know the story, but I know a lot of good people that are experts, and I have them right here. So, you know, and if they need me for something, I'm always there for them, and we always exchange information about what's the best practice in other areas. So that's the greatest thing about having our network, that we rely on each other and help each other succeed. Y bueno, para adelante, cheers. Happy New Year. Feliz Navidad. Dios los cuide. El martes tenemos un cheers para que sepan, para celebrar el premio que nos dieron por ser la mejor red de desarrollo profesional. Gracias a ustedes. De nuevo, mis hermanos. Dios los cuide, Carlos. Good job. Estás contratado. Daniel, estás contratado.
Saludos,
Dios los
Corea.
cuida a
Nos
todos.
vemos.
Y la grabación está
Gracias.
disponible. Mañana le paso la grabación para el que quieren compartirle a sus órdenes. A menos que tenga algún comentario, yo me voy. Carlos, me voy.
Chao.
Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Oye, el cheque me lo mandas por correo, ¿ok?
Sí. Gracias, Ignacio.
Good job, compadre.
Palabras.
Gracias.
Dios te cuide.
Bye bye.